What if a single sheet of paper could shake the very foundations of the British monarchy? Hidden behind gilded walls and guarded by generations of silence, a secret palace memo lay buried until Princess Anne uncovered it. Known as the crown's most formidable royal, she didn't hesitate. Her response was swift, uncompromising, and explosive. But what did she read? And why did it demand the removal of a powerful palace official? For decades, Princess Anne has stood as the embodiment of discipline within the royal family, unyielding, resolute, and guided by an unshakable devotion to duty. While others captured headlines with spectacle and controversy, she built her legacy through quiet endurance and relentless service. To admirers, she was the crown's steadfast guardian. To critics, a figure of intimidating precision. Yet beneath her composed exterior lay a fierce commitment to truth, one that would soon thrust her into the center of a storm that threatened to unravel the very institution she had spent her life protecting. Buckingham Palace, with its towering gates and timeless grandeur, has long symbolized continuity and tradition. To the world, it radiates splendor, stability, and ceremonial grace. But behind its stately fade lies a labyrinth of whispered confidences, sealed documents, and carefully guarded secrets. Within its private corridors, decisions are made that shape not only the monarchy, but the nation itself. Here, loyalty is currency, silence is protocol, and history is written not only in ink but in discretion. It was within this intricate world of privilege and secrecy that the discovery occurred. Tucked deep inside a restricted archive far from public scrutiny lay a classified memorandum marked with authority and sealed with intent. It was not meant to be seen. It was not meant to be questioned. Yet somehow, fate intervened, placing the document into the hands of the one royal least likely to ignore its implications. When Princess Anne unfolded its pages, the air around her seemed to shift, heavy with the weight of revelation. The words she read were not mere administrative notes. They carried the unmistakable tone of concealment, an account so sensitive, so potentially damaging, that its very existence threatened to fracture the crown's carefully preserved image. The memo hinted at actions taken in secrecy, decisions executed behind closed doors, and truths deliberately obscured from both the public and the sovereign. Its contents whispered of betrayal, not by enemies beyond the palace gates, but from within its most trusted ranks. The implications were staggering. Loyalty clashed with conscience. Tradition stood in opposition to accountability. Silence, long regarded as a virtue within royal circles, now threatened to become a weapon against integrity. Princess Anne understood the gravity of what she held. To ignore it would be to protect the institution at the cost of its honor. To confront it would risk igniting a scandal of unprecedented magnitude. Yet she was never one to choose comfort over duty. As she read further, one detail emerged with chilling clarity. The memo pointed toward a high-ranking palace official, a figure cloaked in influence and long shielded by prestige. The document suggested a covert scheme, one concealed through calculated omissions and deliberate misdirection. How long had this secret remained hidden? Who had ensured its silence? And how many had known but dared not speak? The answers were buried in layers of power, secrecy, and fear. But Princess Anne, steadfast and unyielding, had uncovered a truth that could not be buried again. The Iron Princess had reached a moment of reckoning, and history would soon feel the force of her resolve. As whispers began to ripple through the corridors of power, one question lingered ominously in the air. What kind of secret could provoke the monarchy's most steadfast guardian into open defiance? In a royal family often defined by spectacle and scandal, Princess Anne has remained an unyielding force of discipline and dignity. Nicknamed the Iron Princess, she is admired for her resilience and feared for her intolerance of deception. When she uncovered the hidden memo, she didn't merely react, she declared war on secrecy itself. But what in her past shaped the fearless royal who dared to challenge the palace machine? To understand the magnitude of her defiance, one must first understand the woman behind the title. Born into the heart of the British monarchy, Princess Anne was raised not in comfort alone, but in expectation. As the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she grew up beneath the weight of history, where duty was not merely encouraged, it was demanded. From an early age, she was taught that privilege carried responsibility, and that loyalty to the crown was a sacred covenant. Emotion was measured, discipline was paramount, and resilience was not optional. These principles forged a spirit of steel, shaping a royal who would never shrink from obligation or compromise her integrity for convenience. Unlike many who inherited status, Anne earned her reputation through relentless dedication. She became known as the hardest-working member of the royal family, fulfilling countless engagements with precision and tireless commitment. Her approach was neither ornamental nor performative. It was purposeful. She embodied the quiet, unglamorous labor that sustains an institution built on continuity. While others captivated headlines, Anne commanded respect through consistency. Her work spoke not of grandeur, but of grit, a testament to her unwavering devotion to the crown. This discipline was reinforced by her deep connections to the military and her lifelong passion for equestrian excellence. These pursuits sharpened her resolve and instilled a mindset defined by courage, strategy, and endurance. She understood the language of duty not as ceremony, but as sacrifice. Such experiences cultivated a formidable presence, one that was both respected and, at times, quietly feared. She was not easily swayed by politics or pageantry. She demanded competence, clarity, and accountability in all things. Within palace walls, her reputation was unmistakable. Inefficiency frustrated her. Dishonesty repelled her. Bureaucratic manipulation earned her unwavering scrutiny. Princess Anne possessed a rare intolerance for deception, and her sharp perception allowed little to escape unnoticed. Those who worked alongside her understood that she valued truth above comfort and integrity above convenience. She did not seek popularity, nor did she bend to appease expectation. Instead, she upheld a singular standard: that the monarchy must be preserved not through illusion, but through honor. Her loyalty to the crown was absolute, but it was not blind. Anne believed that protecting the monarchy meant confronting its flaws, not concealing them. To her, silence in the face of wrongdoing was not loyalty, it was betrayal. This conviction defined her independence, granting her the courage to challenge hierarchy when conscience demanded it. She was not a rebel, but a guardian, one who understood that tradition survives only when anchored in truth. So when the hidden memo fell into her hands, it did more than shock her. It awakened a moral obligation she could not ignore. The words within its pages were not merely troubling, they were intolerable. They threatened the integrity of the very institution she had spent her life defending. For Princess Anne, there could be no compromise. There could be no retreat. There could only be action. Yet even for the Iron Princess, nothing could have prepared her for the chilling contents hidden within the palace's most guarded files. Locked away in the shadows of royal bureaucracy, the memo was never meant to be found. Its existence defied protocol, its contents threatened reputations, and its implications reached the highest echelons of palace authority. When Princess Anne's eyes scanned its chilling words, history shifted. This was no ordinary document, it was a blueprint of deception. And once uncovered, there would be no turning back. Marked with the highest level of secrecy, the document bore the unmistakable authority of palace command, formal, precise, and deliberately concealed. It was not the kind of correspondence meant for routine review. Its language was coded, its tone calculated, and its intent unmistakable. Every line whispered caution. Every paragraph hinted at truths too dangerous to be spoken aloud. This was not merely ink on paper. It was power preserved in silence, hidden where only the most trusted or the most determined might find it. As Princess Anne read further, the gravity of its contents began to unfold. The memo detailed a covert operation, one designed not to protect the monarchy through transparency, but to manipulate its narrative behind closed doors. Decisions had been orchestrated with chilling precision, shaping public perception while obscuring inconvenient realities. It suggested that truths had been carefully edited, stories strategically redirected, and reputations quietly shielded, all under the guise of safeguarding the crown. Yet beneath that justification lay something far more troubling: the unsettling suggestion that the institution had been protected at the expense of its own integrity. The document exposed calculated decisions made to serve powerful interests within the palace, revealing a network of influence woven through corridors of authority. These were not careless errors or misunderstandings. They were deliberate acts, executed with intent and shielded by protocol. There were references to confidential briefings, suppressed disclosures, and orchestrated responses designed to control what the world would see and what it would never know. Each revelation struck with greater force than the last, tightening the knot of unease forming in Anne's mind. Even more disturbing was the evidence of concealment. The memo alluded to strategic misinformation, suggesting that narratives had been subtly altered to preserve stability at any cost. Facts had been softened, timelines had been adjusted, silence had been enforced. The truth, it seemed, had been treated not as a principle, but as a liability. And in the fragile ecosystem of royal authority, perception had been elevated above honesty. The implications were explosive. Should its contents ever surface beyond palace walls, the credibility of the monarchy could be irreparably damaged. Public trust so carefully cultivated over generations hung in the balance. This was more than a scandal waiting to erupt. It was a fault line threatening to fracture the very foundation of royal legitimacy. And yet, the meticulous efforts to keep it hidden spoke volumes. Restricted access, selective circulation, and layers of bureaucratic protection ensured the memo remained buried, known only to a handful of influential figures bound by secrecy and silence. It became clear that the document had not been an oversight but a carefully controlled secret. Quietly circulated among select officials, it had existed in the shadows, acknowledged by those with power, ignored by those unwilling to challenge it. For years it had remained untouched, protected by loyalty, fear, and the unspoken understanding that some truths were never meant to see the light. But now, it had found its way into the hands of Princess Anne. As the full weight of its revelations settled upon her, shock gave way to clarity, and clarity to resolve. Her pulse did not quicken, her mind did not waver. Instead, a cold determination took hold. She understood the magnitude of what she had uncovered, and the consequences of confronting it. The choice before her was stark: preserve silence and protect the illusion, or expose the truth and defend the crown's honor. For the Iron Princess, there was never truly a choice. As the truth unfolded before her, Princess Anne understood that the memo was not just a scandal, it was a betrayal that demanded justice. Every royal scandal has a shadowy figure at its heart, and this one was no exception. Behind impeccable manners and an untarnished reputation stood a palace official whose influence stretched across the monarchy's inner sanctum. Trusted by many, feared by some, and now exposed by a hidden memo, their legacy teetered on the brink of collapse. But who were they, and how did they wield such dangerous power within the crown? For decades, this senior palace official had existed as an unseen force behind the grandeur of the monarchy, a master strategist operating in silence, shaping outcomes without ever stepping into the spotlight. Their career was defined by precision and discretion, cultivated through years of loyal service and calculated decision-making. To the outside world, they were a symbol of stability, a trusted custodian of royal tradition. Within the palace, however, they were something far more formidable: a gatekeeper of truth, an architect of perception, and a figure whose influence quietly dictated the rhythm of royal affairs. Their authority extended deep into the machinery of the crown. They advised on royal communications, crafted statements that calmed crises, and orchestrated responses that preserved the monarchy's dignity in times of turmoil. When scandals threatened to erupt, it was their steady hand that ensured the institution emerged unscathed. Policies bore their subtle imprint. Narratives were shaped by their careful guidance. In moments of uncertainty, their counsel was not merely valued, it was relied upon. They were entrusted with safeguarding the monarchy's public image, and for years they carried out that duty with remarkable efficiency. Yet the hidden memo told a darker story. Its contents suggested that the line between protection and manipulation had been quietly erased. Allegations emerged of calculated concealment decisions designed not only to defend the crown, but to control the truth itself. Sensitive information had been strategically withheld. Narratives had been reshaped with deliberate intent. What had once appeared as loyalty now hinted at orchestration. Each revelation peeled back another layer, exposing a chilling possibility that the monarchy's image had not merely been preserved, but engineered. Their authority had allowed them to operate without scrutiny. Cloaked in prestige and shielded by tradition, they navigated the corridors of power with near absolute autonomy. Few questioned them. Fewer still challenged them. In an institution where discretion was revered and hierarchy rarely defied, their word carried the weight of unspoken command. The system trusted them, And in that trust lay the perfect cover. But beneath the polished exterior simmered a dangerous tension. Was their loyalty truly to the crown, or to their own legacy? The memo suggested a subtle but devastating conflict between duty and ambition, raising questions about whether their decisions had always served the monarchy or at times served themselves. In the shadows of authority, personal power can become intoxicating, and even the most trusted guardian can lose sight of the line between service and control. As whispers of the memo's existence spread, shockwaves rippled through royal circles. Long-standing confidences began to fracture. Advisors exchanged uneasy glances. The corridors of Buckingham Palace, once governed by quiet certainty, hummed with suspicion and disbelief. The unthinkable had occurred. A figure once considered indispensable now stood at the center of a scandal, threatening to unravel decades of carefully constructed trust. More unsettling still was the realization that they had not acted alone. The memo hinted at alliances forged in secrecy loyalists who had protected them, whether out of devotion, fear, or mutual interest. These silent supporters had ensured the truth remained buried, reinforcing a culture where silence was survival and exposure was unthinkable. For years, the web of influence remained intact. Until now. Because the truth had surfaced, and it had found its way into the hands of the one royal who would never ignore it. With the truth now impossible to ignore, Princess Anne prepared to confront the architect of the scandal face to face. The room fell silent as Princess Anne entered, the weight of centuries of royal authority behind her. In her hand lay the memo that threatened to unravel reputations and ignite a constitutional storm. There would be no theatrics, only truth. As she faced the implicated official, the Iron Princess delivered an ultimatum that would echo through palace history. In that moment, loyalty collided with accountability. The meeting had been arranged with the utmost discretion, summoned not by ceremony, but by necessity. Within the guarded sanctum of Buckingham Palace, where decisions of quiet consequence shaped the destiny of the monarchy, tension hung thick in the air. This was not merely a discussion, it was a reckoning. The hidden memo, once buried beneath layers of silence, now stood as irrefutable evidence. And Princess Anne, armed with unwavering resolve, had come not to negotiate but to confront. Calm yet formidable, she presented the document with measured precision. Her composure was absolute, her voice steady, devoid of hesitation. There was no anger in her tone, only an unyielding clarity that cut deeper than outrage ever could. She spoke not as a princess seeking answers, but as a guardian of the crown demanding truth. Each word she delivered carried the authority of legacy and the gravity of duty. The memo lay before them like a silent witness, its contents impossible to dismiss, its implications too dangerous to ignore. Her demand was unequivocal: transparency. Not partial disclosure, not strategic explanation, but complete and immediate accountability. The integrity of the monarchy, she insisted, could not be preserved through concealment. It could only endure through honesty. To remain silent would be to betray centuries of trust. To act decisively would be to safeguard the institution from erosion. For Princess Anne, there was no alternative. Truth was not a threat, it was the crown's only defense. Across from her, the implicated official struggled beneath the weight of exposure. Shock flickered into denial, and denial into carefully constructed justification. Years of influence had taught them how to navigate crisis, how to reshape narratives, and how to survive scrutiny. They spoke of loyalty, of protecting the monarchy from scandal, of difficult decisions made in extraordinary circumstances. Their words were polished, persuasive, and calculated, yet beneath the veneer of reason lay the unmistakable tremor of desperation. The memo had stripped away their shield of secrecy, leaving their authority dangerously exposed. But Princess Anne remained unmoved. She recognized the familiar language of deflection, the subtle reframing of truth as necessity. To her, such reasoning was not protection, it was deception cloaked in duty. The stakes extended far beyond personal reputations. This confrontation carried ethical and constitutional weight, threatening to fracture the fragile balance upon which the monarchy stood. If left unaddressed, the scandal risked undermining public trust and tarnishing the crown's legitimacy for generations to come. As the crisis escalated, word of the meeting reached senior royals, each drawn into the gravity of its implications. Quiet consultations began behind closed doors, the atmosphere charged with urgency and apprehension. The monarchy had weathered storms before, but this was different. This was not an attack from beyond palace walls, it was a reckoning from within. And at its center stood Princess Anne, unwavering in her conviction that loyalty demanded courage, not silence. With steely resolve, she delivered her final verdict. The official's position was no longer tenable. The damage inflicted by secrecy was too profound, the breach of trust too grave. For the honor of the crown and the preservation of its integrity, their removal was not merely advisable, it was essential. It was a demand that reverberated with historic significance, a declaration that accountability would prevail over influence. In that decisive moment, the Iron Princess drew an unbreakable line between tradition and truth, and as the weight of her ultimatum settled into the fabric of the palace, the echoes of her words signaled a turning point from which there could be no retreat. But as word of the confrontation spread, the palace found itself bracing for a storm that could not be contained behind its gilded gates. When secrets erupt within the monarchy, they do not whisper, they detonate. As rumors of Princess Anne's ultimatum spread through Buckingham Palace, corridors once defined by tradition buzzed with tension and uncertainty. Loyalties fractured, alliances shifted, and whispers of betrayal echoed through royal offices. The question was no longer whether the scandal was real, but whether the monarchy itself could withstand the fallout. In the wake of the confrontation, an uneasy tremor rippled through the palace's inner circle. Urgent consultations were convened behind closed doors, and long-standing routines dissolved into quiet panic. Senior advisors gathered in hushed deliberations, their measured voices carrying the weight of an institution under threat. What had once been dismissed as rumor was now an undeniable crisis. The hidden memo had surfaced, and with it came the chilling realization that the foundations of royal credibility were being tested from within. The crown had faced wars, revolutions, and scandals before, but betrayal concealed behind loyalty struck at its very core. Divisions soon emerged among those entrusted with protecting the monarchy. Some believed that Princess Anne's unwavering stance represented an act of courage necessary to preserve public trust. Others feared her bold demand for accountability risked igniting a scandal that could spiral beyond control. Advisors who had once spoken with unified authority now found themselves at odds, torn between transparency and preservation. In their debates, loyalty was no longer simple. It became layered with doubt, fear, and the heavy burden of consequence. Anxiety spread like wildfire through the palace's ranks. There were growing fears of exposure of headlines that could dismantle decades of carefully cultivated dignity. The potential damage was staggering. If the truth were to escape beyond the palace walls, it could ignite public outrage, weaken institutional authority, and erode the fragile trust upon which the monarchy depended. Reputations, once untouchable, now trembled under the looming threat of revelation. Every whispered conversation carried the same haunting question: how much did the world already know? In response, efforts to contain the crisis began to take shape. Carefully worded statements were drafted. Strategic discussions weighed the risks of silence against the perils of disclosure. Some argued for discretion, insisting that secrecy would protect the crown from unnecessary harm. Others warned that concealment would only deepen the eventual reckoning. The delicate machinery of royal protocol whirred into motion, attempting to contain a scandal that refused to remain confined. Within the royal household, the emotional strain was palpable. Trusted relationships were tested, and uncertainty cast a long shadow over daily affairs. Those closest to the institution grappled with a silent turmoil. Fear for the monarchy's reputation mingled with an unspoken acknowledgement that truth could no longer be suppressed. For some, Princess Anne's resolve inspired admiration. For others, it provoked quiet apprehension. Her defiance had forced the palace to confront a reality it had long avoided. At the heart of the turmoil lay an impossible dilemma. How could an institution built upon tradition embrace transparency without undermining its own mystique? The balance between honesty and preservation grew increasingly fragile. To reveal too much risked destabilizing the crown, to conceal too much threatened its integrity. It was a perilous tightrope, one that demanded courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. Whispers of resignation began to circulate, each murmur sending fresh waves of uncertainty through royal circles. Speculation mounted over political ramifications and constitutional repercussions, as the scandal threatened to extend far beyond palace walls. The monarchy, so often perceived as unshakable, now revealed its human vulnerability, an institution capable of faltering under the weight of its own secrets. And as tensions escalated and uncertainty deepened, one truth became impossible to ignore. The greatest threat was no longer confined to whispered conversations or sealed documents. It was the inevitable moment when silence would break, and revelation would take flight. Yet the greatest challenge still lay ahead: what would happen when the world beyond palace walls learned the truth? The moment the story leaked, the world erupted. Headlines screamed of scandal, commentators speculated relentlessly, and the public demanded answers. For the first time, Princess Anne stood at the center of a global storm, not as a symbol of controversy, but as a defender of integrity. As speculation spiraled into outrage, the monarchy faced a defining question. Could transparency restore trust, or would the revelations deepen the crisis? Within hours, the narrative surged across continents, igniting a media frenzy of unprecedented intensity. News outlets raced to uncover every detail, each revelation more explosive than the last. Words like palace scandal, hidden memo, and royal reckoning dominated headlines, fueling a relentless cycle of intrigue and speculation. The world watched with fascination as the carefully guarded secrecy of Buckingham Palace appeared to fracture under scrutiny. What had once been whispered in hushed corridors now echoed across global platforms, amplified by the insatiable hunger for truth. Public fascination reached a fever pitch. For generations, the monarchy had existed as both symbol and spectacle, an institution cloaked in mystique, admired yet distant. Now its inner workings were exposed to the unforgiving glare of public curiosity. Conversations erupted in homes, cafes, and parliaments alike, each voice grappling with the same burning question: how could such a secret have remained hidden for so long? The scandal transcended borders, transforming into a global drama that captivated millions and demanded answers from the highest seats of power. At the center of the storm stood Princess Anne. To many, she emerged as a hero, an unyielding figure who had dared to challenge secrecy in defense of the crown's integrity. Her reputation as the Iron Princess only strengthened, her actions seen as a testament to courage and unwavering duty. Yet not all voices were united in praise. Critics questioned her boldness, suggesting that her defiance risked destabilizing the very institution she sought to protect. In a world divided by opinion, she became both champion and lightning rod, admired for her integrity and scrutinized for her audacity. Social media ignited with fervent debate. Supporters hailed her as a symbol of accountability, applauding her refusal to shield wrongdoing. Others speculated endlessly, dissecting every rumor and theory with fervor bordering on obsession. Hashtags surged, opinions clashed, and narratives collided in a digital battlefield where truth and speculation blurred into one. The monarchy, once shielded by tradition, now found itself navigating the volatile currents of modern public discourse. Amid the uproar, calls for accountability grew louder. Commentators, historians, and political figures demanded transparency, urging the monarchy to confront the allegations with clarity and courage. The scandal sparked renewed conversations about institutional reform, questioning whether centuries-old traditions could withstand the demands of a rapidly evolving world. The pressure intensified, not only from the public but from international observers who watched closely, aware that the credibility of one of the world's most enduring institutions hung in the balance. Through it all, the monarchy struggled to maintain its composure. Official statements were measured, cautious, and steeped in tradition, yet beneath their formality lay a palpable urgency. The crown's dignity was under siege, challenged by a crisis that refused to fade into silence. Every word, every pause, and every decision carried immense weight as the world waited for clarity. Meanwhile, the implicated official's reputation unraveled with startling speed. Once revered as a trusted guardian of royal stability, they now stood exposed under the relentless glare of public scrutiny. Allegations multiplied, confidence eroded, and alliances quietly dissolved. The fall from grace was swift and merciless, a stark reminder that power built on secrecy is as fragile as it is formidable. As anticipation reached its peak and the world held its breath, the unfolding drama demanded resolution. Eyes remained fixed on Buckingham Palace, awaiting the verdict that would shape the monarchy's future. As the world watched in anticipation, the palace prepared to deliver a decision that would determine the fate of all involved. In a move that stunned the nation, the palace announced the officials' removal, an unprecedented act triggered by Princess Anne's unyielding demand for accountability. It was more than a dismissal. It was a declaration that even the most powerful figures were not beyond reproach. As history unfolded in real time, the Iron Princess emerged not only as a guardian of tradition, but as a reformer reshaping the monarchy's future. The announcement reverberated far beyond palace walls. Delivered with measured precision and unmistakable authority, it confirmed what whispers had long foretold: the implicated official was to be removed from their post with immediate effect. The language was formal, yet its impact was seismic. For an institution steeped in centuries of protocol, where discretion often shielded controversy, the decision signaled a profound shift. It was a rare and resolute acknowledgement that accountability would prevail over privilege. In that moment, silence was broken, and the monarchy confronted its own shadow. The significance of the decision was nothing short of historic. Never before had such a powerful figure within the royal establishment been dismissed under circumstances so charged with controversy. The act sent a clear and unmistakable message not only to those within the palace, but to the world beyond it. Tradition, once perceived as immovable, had yielded to integrity. The crown had chosen truth over secrecy, courage over complacency. And at the heart of that choice stood Princess Anne. Her role was instrumental, decisive, and impossible to ignore. It was her unwavering resolve that forced the reckoning, her moral clarity that compelled action when hesitation might have prevailed. She neither sought recognition nor reveled in triumph, yet her influence was undeniable. Known for her stoicism, she remained steadfast as events unfolded, guided not by ambition but by an unshakable devotion to duty. In challenging the machinery of silence, she reaffirmed her reputation as the monarchy's most formidable guardian. The Iron Princess had drawn a line and history had followed. The reaction was immediate and electrifying. Across the nation and beyond, media outlets dissected the decision with fervor, heralding it as a defining moment for the modern monarchy. Commentators praised the crown's willingness to confront internal wrongdoing, framing the removal as a bold affirmation of ethical leadership. Political observers acknowledged the constitutional significance, noting that the decision reinforced the monarchy's commitment to transparency in an era demanding accountability. Public sentiment swelled with renewed respect, as citizens witnessed an institution long associated with secrecy take an unprecedented stand for integrity. Within the palace, the ripple effects were equally profound. The dismissal redefined expectations of responsibility and conduct, establishing a new standard for those entrusted with safeguarding royal authority. Conversations once cloaked in discretion began to shift toward reform. Protocols were scrutinized, oversight strengthened, and safeguards introduced to ensure that secrecy would never again eclipse truth. The hidden memo, once a symbol of concealment, had ignited a transformation rooted in vigilance and accountability. As reforms took shape, confidence in the monarchy began to recover. Skepticism gave way to cautious optimism, and admiration replaced doubt. The crown, tested by crisis, emerged not weakened but renewed, its legitimacy reinforced by its willingness to confront its own imperfections. This was no ordinary moment. It was a turning point etched into the annals of royal history, a testament to the enduring power of integrity in the face of adversity. For Princess Anne, the outcome was neither victory nor vindication, but duty fulfilled. She had protected the institution she had served her entire life, proving that loyalty demanded courage and that truth, however uncomfortable, was the monarchy's greatest strength. Her actions redefined the boundaries of royal responsibility, leaving an indelible mark on the future of the crown. Yet even as the dust settled, one final question remained: what legacy would this scandal leave behind? Long after the headlines faded, the story of Princess Anne's bold stand would endure as a defining chapter in royal history. In an institution built on tradition, she chose truth. In a culture bound by silence, she demanded accountability. Her actions reshaped perceptions of royal power, proving that integrity, not privilege, is the monarchy's greatest strength. But will history remember this as a scandal or a triumph? In the aftermath of the storm, as speculation gave way to reflection, Princess Anne's legacy emerged with renewed clarity. For decades, she had embodied duty with quiet resilience, earning admiration through tireless service rather than spectacle. Yet this moment set her apart in a way no ceremonial role ever could. She was no longer merely a symbol of steadfast loyalty, she had become a living testament to moral courage. By confronting secrecy within the very institution she had sworn to protect, she transformed integrity from an ideal into an action bold, uncompromising, and unforgettable. Challenging the inner workings of the palace demanded more than authority, it required extraordinary bravery. To expose what others feared to acknowledge was to risk criticism, controversy, and personal isolation. But Princess Anne did not waver. Her decision to act revealed a profound truth, that loyalty to the crown is not measured by silence, but by the courage to defend its honor when it is threatened. In doing so, she shattered the illusion that tradition must come at the expense of transparency, proving that the monarchy's survival depends not on secrecy, but on trust. Her stand also reshaped how the world perceived royal power. For generations, the monarchy had been viewed as an institution governed by mystique and guarded by discretion. Yet through her decisive actions, Anne demonstrated that strength lies not in concealment, but in accountability. She bridged the divide between ancient customs and modern expectations, reminding the public that the crown could evolve without surrendering its dignity. In an era defined by scrutiny and skepticism, her defiance resonated as a powerful affirmation that even the most revered institutions must answer to the truth. The scandal itself became a catalyst for change, altering public expectations of royal accountability. Citizens who once accepted silence as tradition began to demand openness as a standard. The monarchy, tested by controversy, emerged more transparent and resilient. What began as a hidden memo evolved into a turning point, a moment when trust was reforged through honesty. In this transformation, Princess Anne stood as both guardian and reformer, preserving the sanctity of tradition while ushering in a new era of responsibility. Her legacy extended beyond a single confrontation. It inspired lasting institutional changes, strengthening oversight and reinforcing ethical standards within the palace. Policies were revisited, protocols refined, and a renewed commitment to transparency took root. These reforms served not merely as corrective measures, but as enduring safeguards, ensuring that the shadows which once concealed the truth would never again eclipse the light of accountability. Through it all, Princess Anne remained resolute, guided by the principles instilled in her from birth, duty, honor, and resilience. She neither sought acclaim nor avoided scrutiny. Instead, she fulfilled her obligation with unwavering conviction, proving that true leadership is defined not by privilege, but by responsibility. Her actions became a testament to the enduring power of courage, a reminder that integrity is the cornerstone upon which lasting institutions are built. And so, the story endures as both warning and inspiration. It is a narrative of power tested by truth, of tradition tempered by transparency, and of a princess who chose principle over silence. It invites reflection on a timeless question: can authority remain unchallenged in a world that demands honesty, or must it evolve to survive? And as the gates of Buckingham Palace close once more, the echoes of one hidden memo and one fearless princess continue to reverberate through history.